Thank you, kids. I appreciate it very much. Next up on the agenda, how do we stop the drift to socialism? And how do we make sure we're communicating all this with the general public and the middle class? Joining me now, my dear friend Kellyanne Conway, former counselor to President Trump, Fox News contributor and author of Here's the Deal, and Kevin Hassett, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, author of The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism. Kevin, as you always do in these, you made the riff at the top of the show, and the drift to socialism. And I read the poll numbers. I'll read them again because they're very difficult numbers to digest. I mean, it's a scary point. People think we are going into a socialist state. Let's see, 51% to 31%. They don't like it, but 51% to 31% think we're going to do it. Now, they don't want to pay for it. 57% say no higher taxes to support social programs. 35% say okay. Question to you is, how do we stop this drift to socialism? Because it is dragging the economy down. I mean, that's the point of this.
Right. Well, there's like a long and a short version of my answer to that. And for the long version, you should buy The Drift and yes. Read the book. It's a great book. But the bottom line is that the Democrats try to control our minds as citizens with the media, with the universities that indoctrinate us to be socialists. And they try to withdraw respectability from people who stand up to them and make you like someone like they did with Donald Trump that's canceled from the internet and not respectable. And so what we have to do is recognize that it's the Larry Kudlows and the Steve Forbeses and the Kellyanne Conways of the world that are correct. And so they're the ones that should control respectability. And we should have the courage to stand up and defend capitalism and not shy away from the fight. Even though we're going to get smeared, our Wikipedia pages are going to be terrible, we just have to stand up and fight. And so what I call for people to do in the book, The Drift, is sort of first get informed about what's going on. And then second, come out with a really loud voice because they can't cancel all of us.
So I don't want to blame Biden entirely because I think Republicans are also guilty of the drift. I want to follow through on this. And we saw this. You had 18 or 20 Republicans in the Senate voting for that stupid $1.7 trillion omnibus bill, and prior administrations too. But basically, the Bidens are moving us towards central planning, government controls, more spending, more taxing, and more regulating. And I think that has to be the heart of the development. I mean, maybe the Republicans can slow it down in the House. I don't know. But I want to get your take on that because the drift is ultimately a policy problem.
Right. It's a policy problem. And right now we have a golden opportunity to do something about it. We've hit the debt limit, I guess, about today. And Congress can't spend more if we don't lift it. And there are all these people out there saying that the world's going to fall apart if we try to make a deal to cut spending. But there's a long history of using the debt limit to reduce spending a lot. In fact, Speaker Boehner got a dollar-for-dollar reduction in spending for a dollar lifting of the debt limit. And so what Republicans need to do is recognize that it's time to act. They need to stand firm. It's not irresponsible. Remember, Joe Biden said it's demented to try to negotiate over the debt limit, but he himself negotiated over it when he was in Congress. The point is just that now is the time to do it, but everybody here in the audience and watching needs to recognize that while they do it, the left-wing media and all the professors at Harvard are going to be telling us that these demented Republicans are risking the future of our nation. But we're not. The future of our nation is at risk if we don't cut spending.
Kellyanne, let's just talk about this. You've been a counselor to a lot of people, including President Trump. What is the best way, in your judgment, to communicate that prosperity is down, that economic freedom is down, that government is too big, that we're drifting towards socialism, and it's not a good thing? In other words, what's the best way to say this to make it effective?
A few things, Larry. First, let's start at home. We parents should start giving our kids allowances again. Here's $10, Johnny, and now I'm the federal government. I'm going to take $5 of it back from you. That'll teach them right away when they're young what happens when others come in and feel like they have a right to your hard-earned money and what should be done with it. But moving forward, I think that socialism and capitalism they're not just misaligned for the public, they're misunderstood. Many young people don't necessarily understand it. That's not a slight against young people. I used to be a young person many decades ago. I like young people, but they don't know that socialism ends up having people who want socialism be very rich. So for example, Chavez, Castro, Stalin, these were wealthy people who were trying to put forth a policy that suggested we're going to take wealth away from the privileged few and spread it out to everyone else, whereas they ended up being very wealthy. I think some of the people in this country right now calling for socialism are among the wealthiest, just like the climate change hypocrites. They're the ones flying their private jets to the World Economic Forum.
Vladimir Putin may be the richest guy on the planet.
Could be.
I mean, seriously.
Could be.
I mean, to use the notion of hypocrisy is very
That's
important.
right. And sadly, and the destructiveness, in other words, of these despotic tendencies and trying to bring socialism everywhere. Look what he's doing in Ukraine. But I think that we should go back to the beginning and make sure that our curriculum teaches principles that are incredibly, I think, time-worn and important to Americans so that they understand and appreciate what a free market, free capitalist system means. Also, they have to understand what competition means. Competition in the classroom, competition in business. This whole call for equity and socialism means that they want equality of outcomes. They want us all to have the same thing at the end. We believe in fairness, which means everybody starts at the beginning. And fairness really undergirds a lot of tax policy, immigration policy. People are saying it's not fair that plumbers and pipe fitters are paying for the student loans of lawyers and doctors. They understand that fairness means equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome.
Can we make a case, I got to get out, but merit, yes. Not various affirmative actions and not all these categories of, gender and sex and whatever color. Merit matters. If you work hard, you should succeed. Does that work? Does that line of reasoning? Is that a communications tool, or should we stay away from that?
No, of course it works. And I think there's all types of diversity, obviously. Some schools and some employers look at racial diversity or gender diversity. I think the Supreme Court is going to have something to say about that with respect to college admissions soon, Larry. But there are all types of diversity. There has to be diversity of thought. There has to be religious diversity. There has to be the fact that your parents go to college. Maybe you're a first-generation college student. So we have to get back to respecting the richness and the diversity of our nation, not pretending that we should all look the same and sound the same and believe the same. Then we have a shot at promoting capitalism and free market society.
And we should be fearless.
Fearless.
You're
right? Peerless.
Fearless.
We should all be fearless.
No, we should be fearless. All right. Kellyanne Conway and Kevin Hassett, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I like that. Fearless. Hold on to that thought.